Wene Bojo, greetings to all my relations and my fellow Saugeen Ojibwe Nation citizens. Giwede Nong Indijna Kas, Wabayijin de Dodem, Saugeen, Ojibwe, and Ojibwa. My name is Giwede Nong, meaning North Wind, or you could call me Jonathan. My clan is Martin Clan, warrior clan for our people, and my ancestral relations are from Saugeen and Wukumakong. First, I would like to acknowledge our ancestors, acknowledge their fight for their future generations, us here today. And I'd like to acknowledge the multitude of unborn children yet to come. I'd like to acknowledge the lands that we sit on today as the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe peoples, including Ojibwe, Chippewa, Potawatomi, Odawa, and Mississaugas. First, I would like to share with you all who I am and where I come from. For those who may not know, my mother is Nahani Bell Redbird, and my grandmother is the late Elaine Bell, sister to Leland Bell from Wukumakong. My grandfather is Duke Redbird, who is the nephew to James or Jim Mason, our last hereditary chieftain of Saugeen. My grandfather, Duke Redbird, was removed from Saugeen and his mother, Kathleen Mason, at the age of 1 and lived in over 7 foster homes until he was the age to live on his own. My grandfather would live the majority of his life in the Greater Toronto area, accomplishing many great feats, such as winning the World Poetry Award in India, becoming a Canadian broadcaster and television reporter for City TV, received a Grammy Awards nomination for his feature on Native North America in 2015, and starting the first Indigenous billiards club called the Colored Stone on Queen Street in Toronto. He's now 83 years old and the advisor to the Toronto District School Board Superintendent, which he was fundamental in changing all schools in the GTA to acknowledge our Indigenous peoples and our Indigenous lands. Every day in their morning announcements, children from all over will now understand and recognize our peoples and our territory. Lastly, my grandfather was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award for his influence through arts on human rights and an honorary doctorate from the Ontario College of Art and Design. I mentioned this and I mentioned my grandfather's work as he spent majority of his life working for the betterment of our people, using creativity. My grandfather is my mentor and my most senior advisor, who has bestowed decades of wisdom in me as his successor. It was my grandfather who brought me back to Saugeen to meet my Mason relatives and has given me this vision that I'd like to share with you all today. A vision for the next 7 generations, a future of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation's sovereignty. I also would like to take some time to share who I am and how I got here today. As my grandfather, I grew up in the Greater Toronto area and spent much of my time in the urban Indigenous community. I've worked at Misway Beak, participated at Native Canadian Centre of Toronto, sat on boards for the Indigenous Network, and lived in Gabriel Dumont, an urban res housing complex in Scarborough. While I was living in this urban res, I often asked myself, why do our people live in such poverty? When a few blocks down from our urban res, there was the Scarborough Golf Club and the Scarborough Bluffs, where multi-million-dollar homes and luxury vehicles. It came down to this one thing that we call Jonya. I would then spend majority of my career in my life learning what this one thing, Jonya, really means. It came down to this one thing we call Jonya, money. I would later learn the majority of lives in our world today are rooted by this thing we call Jonya. It is a broken system of capitalism that dominates our world today. As a young boy, I started to question my elders about Jonya. And I did get answers. However, I wanted to seek more understanding. As a young boy, I went to my local library and my local bookstore, and I started to read and learn about money. I found a book that would change my life and my perspective on Jonya forever. That book popped out at me like it was calling my spirit. I grabbed that book, and that book was the first book I ever read on my own. It was called Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. This book would describe how money is moved between different classes of people. On the title of the book, it had 4 quadrants, very similar to our medicine wheel. And on the top left quadrant, it had an E. Below that was an S. To the top right was a B. And below that was an I. And this book talked about how money moves in our societies and how the masses of people live on one side or within one quadrant. And the uber wealthy people who are living in abundant lifestyles are often on the right side of that quadrant, operating predominantly in the B and the I. What this book taught me was that money was the tool to create wealth and abundance. And so as a young boy, I learned as much as I could about this thing we call Jonya. This book would lead my curiosity and lead my attention to becoming the youngest financial advisor for an investment company called Edward Jones. I was just the age legally to deal with money and obtain licenses to sell investments and insurance. And I gained all this knowledge from books and the internet. Because I was so new at investing and learning about money, I would go door to door in my community, knocking on people's homes, trying to attract customers. And I hated it. But I had to step out of my comfort zone to learn and to engage with this thing we call Jonya. During my door knocking campaign, I met an interesting gentleman. This gentleman ended up being from the Jewish community who really enjoyed my tenacity and took me under his wing. He would introduce me to a whole new world of investments, an exclusive investment club that was exclusive to his people in his community, the Jewish people. I would then work many months as a mortgage investment agent, learning how Jewish people were investing their money, which was very different to what I was suggesting at Edward Jones. The Jewish community in Toronto came together and pooled their monies into one vehicle called a Mortgage Investment Corporation, or a MIC for short. The Mortgage Investment Corporation would then lend that money as mortgages to real estate in Toronto and earn 8 to as high as 16% interest on their money, paid every month and guaranteed by real estate. The other interesting thing that I learned working in the Jewish community was when a Jewish person needed money or needed a mortgage, they would not get charged any interest. This was very interesting to me, and I would ask the senior leaders of the community, I would ask them why they did that. Why did you not charge your own people interest, but you would charge others interest? And they would tell me it is to help our community. We are building up our people. And as we build up our people reinvest into our pooled entity called the Mortgage Investment Corporation. So this allows us to do more business with outside communities and brings in more money into our community. I spent many years learning from the Jewish community and learned their language is numbers, literally. Their alphabet, each letter is a number. The Jewish people had a culture focused on numerology. Their people focused on finance and accounting. This culture ensured the success of their people in a capitalistic world. The problem is they were missing the connection that our Anishinaabe people have and know so well. The connection to the land, the connection to our mother, the connection to the arts, the connection to the larger group of people that all share this land together, and the treaty lands a dish with one spoon. After gaining this knowledge of finance, I started to teach my community about credit scores, credit cards, RRSPs, savings, and mortgages. I would then teach the cash flow quadrant to our people to show them how money really works. I would spend many years as an entrepreneur teaching finance in the urban Indigenous community. And then I was recruited to work for Wabatek, Community Development Corporation, to support their expansion into Southern Ontario, specifically the GTA and Southwestern Ontario. This was 8 years ago when I jumped at that opportunity, as my role would then be providing financing to the GTA Indigenous community and to 12 First Nation communities in Southwestern Ontario, including Saugeen and Nawash. During my first 12 months, I financed double the First Nation projects than my other senior officers financed. But I informed my general manager at the time, Don Madavi, that I was working over 60 hours a week and my caseload kept piling up. It would never go down. She responded, just do what you can because we do not have funding for another person. After another 6 months of working overtime, I decided this was too much for me. And I started my own company to support people in packaging their applications to speed up the Wabatek funding process to get more funds out to our community members. This work then got the attention of many Indigenous entrepreneurs, and I was recruited to join a new company called Pontiac Community Developers. This company would support community development through economic development and policy development, which attracted me to join the team. I would then work for Pontiac for nearly 6 years, supporting First Nation governments across Turtle Island and New Zealand. Pontiac quickly became leaders in financing First Nation governments with our partnership with the First Nation Finance Authority, where we supported over $110 million towards First Nation projects, including Long Plains Hemp Farm and Truck Stop, many gas station projects, and a cannabis facility back in 2015. I then was a part of a private company that was then going to be traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange. In 2008, I started to work with publicly traded companies on the Toronto Stock Exchange, such as Drone Delivery Canada, Oxley Group, and Air Canada. In 2019, I was hired by the City of Toronto to support the idea of creating an Indigenous Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, where I conducted the feasibility study and research. This research would then lead me to completing my Master's of Management, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship from Queen's University, Smith School of Business. Presently, I am an instructor for the University of Waterloo. I teach one business course a semester, and I'm also working towards my Chartered Financial Analyst designation. And as of January 1st, 2021, I was appointed by both chiefs and councils of Saugeen and Nawash to be the new president of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation Finance Corporation, or better known as SONFC. To give some history on Saugeen Ojibwe Nation Finance Corporation, it was established in 2014, and it was established as a bare trustee or a flow-through corporation for monies that was earned from SON's equity ownership of Bruce to Milton transmission line. SON FC owns 34.19% ownership of Bruce to Milton transmission line, with the remaining ownership, 65.81%, owned by Hydro One. Both of our entities coming together created the B2M Limited Partnership. B2M Limited Partnership currently holds about $500 million in assets. The transmission line that runs from Bruce Power to the GTA has a book value of approximately $489 million. That asset generates 33.7 million in revenue every single year and has about 17 million in net profits every single year. The transmission line has a life expectancy of 75 years. However, it could last up to 125 years with proper maintenance and operations. Because of this, our day-to-day operation and maintenance of the Bruce to Milton transmission line is conducted by our general partner, Hydro One. This maintenance from a professional transmission line company is important, as this means B2M LP will continue to generate over $17 million in net profits every year for the next 100 plus years. With our equity ownership, we earn 1.5 million in dividends every 3 months. Additionally, we get a true-up payment at the end of the year, depending on how well B2M Limited Partnership business operated and how much energy was used throughout that year. For 2020, we had a true-up payment of approximately $670,000. That means we've had a total of about 6.67 million in revenue for SON FC. Because we had to obtain a loan to purchase the equity, the ownership in B2M LP, the majority of our revenue at this time goes back to paying our debt, our lenders. SON FC has 2 large loans that originally totaled $75 million. One loan for 50 million and a second loan for 25 million. Both of these loans will be fully repaid November 1st, 2039, with the first loan of 50 million being fully repaid November 1st, 2039, and our second loan of 25 million to be fully repaid November 1st, 2029. Both of these loans are at a fixed interest rate of about 3%. A fixed interest rate means that the interest rate will not change throughout the lifetime of the loan. So we do not have to worry about the changing Canadian bank rates. This is an incredible rate as it's fixed for a period of 15 and 25 years long. This is also a very unique financing opportunity, as it was 100% funded by a lending institution. This is very rare, as any new venture does not get 100% financing. Secondly, is that we created a new corporation which limited the liability or the recourse against our First Nation governments. This entity is a separate entity from our First Nation governments, which means the lender can never recourse or reclaim any of our First Nation assets. The reason for all of this being able to happen and for lender to lend us this money at such a low interest rate was because of the Aboriginal Loan Guarantee Program. The Aboriginal Loan Guarantee Program is a provincial guarantee to our lenders that gives our lenders a financial guarantee if we were ever to default on our loan. Saugeen FC was the second entity in Ontario to utilize this program, which was a great feat for our Saugeen communities and the next 7 generations. Saugeen will be an outsourced revenue generator for many years to come. And what this project was a great achievement by our leadership at that time. As mentioned, Saugeen FC generates about 6.65 million in 1 calendar year. From 6.65 million, 5.29 million is paid directly to our lenders, or approximately 79%. That 79% of revenue goes directly to our lenders to pay our debt down every quarter, every year. Every year, Saugeen FC then divides approximately 1 to 1.5 million in dividends to both of our First Nation administrative governments. After paying our operating expenses, which include accounting, admin, auditing, legal, trustee, and bank fees. Overall, the purpose of Saugeen FC is to provide financial oversight of the B2M limited partnership, to budget our remaining income after our debts are paid, to communicate and report back to Saugeen FC shareholders, and to pay dividends to our 2 First Nation communities. Saugeen FC was originally structured to report to Joint Council and to obtain any approvals by both First Nation leaders, chiefs, and councillors. I want to make it clear that Saugeen FC is a separate entity from both First Nations, from Joint Council, from Saugeen Environmental Office. Saugeen FC is a separate entity in our traditional territory that has a focused mandate to provide financial and operating oversight of our B2M limited partnership. Essentially, Saugeen FC's role and my role as president is to oversee the operations of the $500 million transmission line from Bruce Power to Milton. As the newly appointed Saugeen FC president and sole director, I will be conducting strict financial oversight of B2M and of Saugeen FC. I will ensure that all entities involved are strictly adhering to all agreements in principle, and I will ensure the longevity of our financial interest in B2M LP. I am dedicating my full attention to Saugeen FC, and I will be developing a strategic plan that will be providing additional governance and oversight on my activities as president. I will be doing this by adding an additional layer of governance, additional to Joint Council's oversight, by adding 4 new board members to Saugeen FC and B2M Advisory Committee. I will be leading the recruitment of 2 new board members from Saugeen and 2 new board members from Nawash. I have also made the recommendations that our board members do not sit on either councils. This is to ensure that we have continuity in our leadership. The recommendation of this additional layer of governance and oversight was recommended to Joint Council, and the motion was made and passed on March 22nd of this year. I will also be developing a communication plan within my strategic plan that will include in-person engagements to support transparency and build our communities. I will also be providing more online webinars and the ability to join and view our future board meetings. I believe that SON-FC can be a great tool for us to build community, build trust, and build on future initiatives that are very similar to SON-FC that we have within our territory. Now I'd like to speak about the current investigation. First and foremost, it is an active investigation, which myself, as president, our financial forensic investigator, Zeitman Forensic Accounting, and Nawash Police Services are all taking very seriously, and is currently our top priority. As it is in an active investigation, I cannot comment on the activities or the suspicions at this time. I can inform you that our investigative team has been thoroughly examining all legal documents and all financial transactions from the inception of SON-FC in 2014. This is a very lengthy task, but it is my responsibility to ensure the professionals who specialize in legal and financial forensic investigation are engaged and will be developing a complete comprehensive report on SON-FC's past activities. I do not have an exact date when the investigation will be complete. However, rest assured that this is SON-FC's top priority. As I want to inform our SON members that I will be providing updates as they become available via online sessions like today and in-person sessions in the near future. Our goal is to be as transparent as possible without jeopardizing SON-FC financially or legally. It is a very sensitive matter that must be done with the utmost care and accuracy. In closing, I want to inform everyone that it brings me great honor to represent our people of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. Legacy is very important to me. I want to make sure my family and my community are proud to be the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation peoples. I want to pay homage to my great uncle James Mason, and I want to pay homage to all the many great leaders of our day, all the many great ancestral leaders of our past, and all the future unborn Anishinaabe leaders of our future. Our future is bright. SON will be leaders in energy, leaders in food sovereignty, leaders in environmental protection, leaders in social impact, and leaders in communal living. My future is dedicated to Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. Our future will be a prosperous future. We today and future generations will be sovereign. We will all one day soon live the good life every day. Mino Bamadazuin. Again, it brings me great honor to serve our people, and you will be seeing more of me around the community in the near future. I also wanted to open up to any emails or comments or any questions. My email is president-sonfc@Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. And I also want to let everyone know that I am on Nawash and Saugeen's Facebook page, and to feel free to add me to Facebook as well. And I would make myself available for emails, texts, as well as in-person and online engagements in the future as a part of my communication plan. Lastly, I want to say Chimigwich, many thanks for bringing me into this leadership role. And I'll see you soon. Bamapi.